chosen one. There is a pair of eyes that has been watching you for weeks now, not from someone outside your life, but from the version of you that is still becoming. That version has witnessed every moment you pulled back, every time you said yes, while your soul screamed no. And today, that version has run out of patience. This is not a promise of miracles. This is a call to awareness, and you felt it before you ever clicked on this video. If you are here, that is not coincidence. That is a signal. Let me describe something and you tell me if it sounds familiar. You wake up in the morning and the first thing you feel is not tiredness. It is a heaviness that has no name. Like you are carrying something larger than today, but you cannot yet see what it is. Your life looks fine from the outside. Work is moving. Relationships function on the surface. Bills get paid. But underneath all of that, something keeps whispering, not screaming, whispering, "This is not everything." You have tried to explain this feeling before, maybe to a friend, maybe to yourself at 3 in the morning, and every time you tried, the words fell short. If you told someone, they would say, "Stop overthinking," but you know this is not overthinking. This is a recognition that lives deeper than thought. It sits in the center of your chest, like a stone that will not dissolve no matter how many distractions you throw at it. Here is what that feeling actually is. It is not confusion. It is not mild depression. It is not dissatisfaction with your blessings. It is an evolution signal, the kind the body sends when the current container has become too small for the spirit expanding inside it. The same way, a seed cracks its shell, not because the shell failed, but because growth demanded more room. That pressure in your chest is not something wrong with you. It is something right trying to push through. The restlessness you carry is not because you're on the wrong path. It is because you have been standing still on the right path for too long, and you know it. Now here is where this message separates from everything else you have heard. The eyes watching you most closely right now do not belong to an enemy, a jealous friend, or a secret admirer. They belong to the version of you that is forming in every decision you have not yet made. That version does not live in some distant future. It exists right now in the gap between who you are and who you keep hesitating to become. Every time you shrink yourself to make someone else comfortable, that version steps one pace further away. Every time you honor what you know is true, even when it costs you, it steps closer. Picture a long hallway, dim light. At the far end stands a figure, your outline, your height, your posture, but carrying something you do not yet carry. A stillness, a certainty. You can see this figure, but you cannot reach it yet. And this figure is not waiting passively. It is watching you the way a builder watches a foundation being poured, measuring whether the ground can hold what is about to be placed on it. That is what God is doing in your life right now. Not punishing your silence, not ignoring your prayers, measuring your foundation. The architect does not place weight on ground that has not been tested. And every uncomfortable season you have walked through, the loneliness that felt purposeless, the betrayal that made no sense, the waiting that seemed endless, that was not abandonment, that was compression, the same pressure that turns coal into something unbreakable. You have felt something shifting lately, have you not? Not in your circumstances, but in your perception. Things that used to bother you do not land the same way. People whose opinions used to steer your decisions now sound distant, like a radio station you have driven out of range from. You are not becoming cold, you are becoming clear. And clarity, real clarity, feels strange at first, because you have spent so long navigating through fog. Here is the part most people miss. That quiet shift you are feeling, the one no one around you seems to notice, that is the most important thing happening in your life right now. more important than the promotion you are chasing, more important than the relationship you are trying to fix, more important than the number in your bank account. Because when internal alignment happens, first, external results do not just arrive, they arrive and stay. Without alignment, success is just pressure wearing a nice suit. So the question is not whether you are ready for what is coming. The question is whether you are willing to see clearly, starting with how you see yourself. Because the version watching you from the end of that hallway is not asking you to be stronger. It is asking you to stop looking at your life through the eyes of people who were never meant to define you. And that shift from living inside someone else's story to designing your own, that is where everything changes. Most people live their entire lives inside a story someone else wrote for them. They were handed a script in childhood by parents, by culture, by circumstances, and they never questioned whether that script still fits. The difference between a chosen one and everyone else is not talent, not luck, not some mystical selection. It is the refusal to keep performing a role that was never designed for the person they are becoming. And that refusal, quiet as it may seem, is the most dangerous thing you can do in a world that profits from your compliance. You ended the last chapter standing at the edge of a question whether you're willing to stop seeing yourself through the eyes of people who were never meant to define you. This chapter is where that question gets answered. There is a narrative you have been carrying probably for years, and it sounds something like this: I am the one who gives too much, or I am the one who always gets misunderstood, or I am the one who holds everything together while everyone else falls apart. These stories are not lies. They are real experiences. But here is what makes them dangerous. They keep you locked in the position of reacting instead of creating. As long as your identity is built around what others do to you, you will always need others to misbehave so your story can continue. That is not strength. That is dependency wearing the mask of resilience. And the version of you at the end of that hallway does not carry any of those narratives. Not because it has forgotten the pain, but because it has stopped building a home inside it. The shift from victim to architect is not about circumstances changing. It is about the question you ask when circumstances hit. A victim asks, "Why is this happening to me?" An architect asks, "What is this building inside me?" Same storm, completely different relationship with the rain. When someone overlooks you, the old narrative says, "Why do they not value me?" The architect narrative asks, "What does their blindness reveal about where I've been placing my worth?" When a door closes and it stings, the old version mourns the door. The new version studies the wall and realizes the door was never the only way through. This is not positive thinking. This is strategic perception, and God has been training you in it whether you realized it or not. Here is where it gets interesting in a way you can actually feel. When you begin operating as the architect of your own experience, something shifts in the atmosphere around you, and it happens fast. People start treating you differently, not because you demanded it, but because the signal you emit changes. There is a frequency that radiates from someone who no longer needs approval, and every person in the room picks it up unconsciously. You walk into a meeting or a gathering, and you are not louder, not more aggressive, not performing confidence. You are simply present without apology. And that presence, unforced, unperformed, does something strange to the people around you. It unsettles them. They pause before speaking to you. They measure their words. They notice you in ways they cannot articulate. Your presence shifts the room, not because you are trying to shift it, but because a person who has stopped auditioning for their own life carries a gravity that others cannot ignore. Think about the last time you said less than everyone expected you to, not out of shyness, but out of choice. You held your opinion. You let the silence sit. And someone looked at you a beat too long, trying to read what you were not saying. That was not coincidence. That was the architect in you already operating, already choosing what to give and what to withhold. Your intuition recognized this pattern before your mind caught up. You have always known that your quietest moments carried the most weight. You simply had not given yourself permission to trust that knowing until now. The version of you that is becoming does not speak more. It speaks less, but every word lands with the weight of intention behind it. This is not about being cold or calculated. It is about being so clear on who you are that you no longer waste language trying to convince anyone. And that clarity, chosen one, is not something you have to manufacture. It is something you have to stop burying under the rubble of narratives that were never yours to begin with. But before you can build anything new on this cleared ground, there is a step that most people skip because it looks like doing nothing at all. It is the practice of deliberate silence, and it is far more powerful than anything you have ever said. You are not tired because you do too much. You are tired because you have been giving access to people and situations that were never meant to receive what you carry. Energy is not infinite, and every chosen one eventually learns this the hard way, not through theory, but through that specific kind of exhaustion that sleep cannot fix. The kind where you wake up already drained, not from labor, but from leakage. And the leakage has been happening in 3 places you probably have not named yet. You explain yourself to people who have not earned the explanation. You react emotionally to people whose only goal was to watch you react. And you share your dreams and plans with people who do not have the capacity to hold them safely. Each one of these is a crack in the vessel, and what pours out is the very energy God has been building inside you for what comes next. Let me paint this so you can see it clearly. You have a breakthrough, maybe a promotion, maybe a revelation, maybe a decision that finally feels aligned. And the very first thing you do is reach for your phone. You call someone, you post something, you tell a coworker during lunch. Not because you need advice, but because you need someone to confirm that the breakthrough is real. And then it happens. The person you told pauses 1 beat too long. Or they say that is great in a voice so flat it could slide under a door. Or they immediately pivot to their own story as if yours was just the opening act. Your chest drops slightly. The joy you carried 5 minutes ago loses 30% of its voltage just like that. They did not do anything cruel, but you placed something sacred into a container that was never built to hold it. And that is not their failure. That is a misallocation of energy that the version of you at the end of that hallway would never make. This is why deliberate silence is not passive withdrawal. It is the first real weapon in your arsenal. Not silence as punishment, not silence as avoidance, not silence as some manipulative cold shoulder. Silence as architecture. Conscious selection of where your energy lands and who gets to witness what is forming inside you. There are 3 rules to this, and they are simple enough to start today. First, the 72-hour rule. Any good news, any breakthrough, any revelation, you hold it privately for 72 hours before sharing with anyone. If after 3 days you still feel the need to tell someone, go ahead. But you will notice something remarkable. Most of the time the need dissolves because the joy has already anchored itself inside you without requiring external confirmation. You validated it yourself, and that self-validation became the foundation instead of someone else's reaction. Second, the rule of who asks first. Stop volunteering information about your life. Share only when someone specifically asks, and only when that person has a history of responding in a way that matches the weight of what you are sharing. This is not secrecy. This is stewardship. The same principle God uses when He reveals things in seasons rather than all at once. Not everything you carry is meant for every audience. Third, the energy direction test. After any conversation, check your body honestly. If you feel lighter, that was genuine connection, and it fed you. If you feel heavier, or if you find yourself mentally justifying what you said, or wishing you had said less, that was leakage. Your body already knows the difference. You have simply been overriding its signals because you thought being open with everyone was the same as being authentic. It is not. Authenticity is not the absence of boundaries. Authenticity is knowing exactly what is true about you and choosing wisely who receives that truth. Every time you retrieve your energy from a place that did not deserve it, the figure at the end of the hallway steps closer, not because you moved faster, but because you stopped running in the opposite direction. Silence gathers what noise scatters. And what has been gathered now needs a structure to live inside, which is why what comes next is not about the world around you at all. It is about the architecture happening inside your own mind, in the place where every boundary either holds firm or quietly collapses before anyone on the outside ever notices. The real boundary is not the fence you build between yourself and the world. The real boundary is the story you allow to run unchecked inside your own head. Before anyone crosses a line with you externally, you have already crossed it internally by permitting thoughts that do not serve the version of you that is forming. You let the narrative, "I am not enough," circulate freely without challenge. You allow the belief "I owe them an explanation" to dictate your behavior in rooms where you owe nothing. You accept standards far below your value because the fear of losing connection feels worse than the slow erosion of self-respect. And every single time this happens, you broadcast a signal that is invisible but unmistakable, a signal that says you can go further with me than you should. People do not receive that signal through words. They receive it through instinct, and instinct never misreads the frequency of someone who has not yet learned to guard their own mind. Here is something that will land heavier than you expect. Have you ever noticed that the same type of person keeps showing up in your life? Different face, different name, but the same dynamic, the same pattern of disrespect or dismissal or quiet manipulation. Most people call that bad luck or bad taste, but it is neither. There is a narrative running inside you, something like, "I must prove my value before I can receive love," or "I have to earn my place at every table I sit at." And that narrative operates like a broadcast frequency. It does not attract random people. It attracts the exact type of person who needs you to keep proving, because your proving is what feeds their position. This is not your fault, but it is your responsibility. And the moment you change the internal broadcast, the external cast of characters begins to shift without you having to fire anyone or deliver a single confrontational speech. The version of you that is becoming does not prove anything to anyone. It exists, and it lets that existence speak on its own behalf. That is not arrogance. That is what happens when someone finally understands that their worth was established before any human opinion entered the picture. God did not design you and then wait for a committee to approve the blueprint. The approval was built into the making, and every moment you spend trying to earn what was already given is a moment you spend walking away from the hallway instead of through it. Your intuition has recognized this for a long time. You have felt it in those rare moments of clarity when someone's opinion of you suddenly stopped mattering, not because you were angry, but because something deeper in you simply knew. The problem was never the knowing. The problem was trusting it long enough to let it restructure how you live. So here is the practical architecture, because awareness without action is just philosophy. Every morning in the first 2 minutes after waking, before the phone, before the emails, before the noise of the world rushes in, ask yourself one question. What thought is already running in my mind right now, and which version of me does it serve? Not a journaling exercise, not a meditation ritual, just an honest 2-minute checkpoint between you and your own operating system. You will be surprised how often the first thought of the day belongs to an old narrative, something someone said to you years ago that took root and has been running on autopilot ever since. The second practice is narrative replacement, and it is simpler than any self-help book makes it sound. Every time the old story surfaces, I am not enough, I do not belong here, I need to justify my choices. Do not fight it. Just ask one question. Whose voice said that first? Is this my voice, or is it the voice of someone I internalized so long ago I forgot it was not mine? That single question asked honestly begins to separate your identity from the identities that were layered onto you without your permission. The third practice is the hardest and the most important. Stop rehearsing pain. Every time you mentally replay a conversation that wounded you, rerunning the words, reimagining what you should have said, reliving the sting you are not processing, you are reinforcing, you are pouring fresh concrete into a crack you are trying to heal. The version of you that is becoming does not rehearse old damage. It acknowledges what happened, extracts what it taught, and moves forward without dragging the wreckage behind it. Not because the pain was not real, but because carrying it into every new room guarantees that every new room will feel exactly like the old one. When your mind stops working against itself, something unexpected begins to happen on the surface. Your words start to change, not because you are monitoring every sentence, but because the source generating those words has shifted. And that shift in language is where the next layer of boundaries begins to take shape. You do not need to speak more to be heard. You need to speak less, but with every word carrying the weight of something you actually mean. Most people talk to fill space. They talk to manage discomfort, to smooth tension, to signal that they are agreeable and safe. But the version of you that is becoming does not use language as cushioning. It uses language as architecture, every sentence placed with intention, every silence left deliberately unfilled. And the distance between those two approaches is the distance between someone people talk over and someone people lean in to listen to. Your words have been leaking power in ways you have not fully confronted yet, and this is where that confrontation begins. There are 3 patterns of speech that quietly dismantle your authority before anyone in the room even decides how to treat you. The first is over-explaining. When you say no and then attach 5 reasons why you are not being polite, you are asking for permission to hold your own boundary. The no was complete on its own. Everything you added after it was a negotiation you never needed to enter. The second pattern is reflexive apologizing, beginning sentences with sorry, but I think, or sorry to bother you, when there is absolutely nothing to apologize for. Every unnecessary apology is a small demotion you hand yourself before the other person even has a chance to respond. It trains the room to see you as someone who needs to justify their own presence. The third is defensive sharing, when someone casually asks what you have been doing, and instead of a simple answer, you launch into a full explanation of your choices, your reasoning, your schedule, as if their question was a courtroom cross-examination. That reflex reveals something specific. It reveals that somewhere inside the old narrative of "I need approval" is still running the show, still generating language designed to earn what does not need to be earned. Let me show you what the difference looks like in real time. A co-worker says, "You have been quiet lately. Everything okay?" The old version of you responds instantly, "Oh yeah, I have just been really busy with this project and also trying to get some rest, and you know how it is." 40 words, none of them necessary, all of them signaling that a single casual question is enough to pull you out of your center and into performance mode. Now, watch the version that is becoming handle the same moment. A slight smile, focusing on a few things. Full stop. No elaboration, no justification, no nervous laughter to fill the gap. And here is what happens in that gap. The other person respects you more, not less. Not because you were cold, but because you transmitted something rare. You transmitted the frequency of someone who knows exactly what they are doing and does not need you to understand it in order to keep doing it. That frequency is what people actually respond to, even when they cannot name it. 3 rules will restructure how your words operate if you apply them starting today. The first is the gravity rule. Before you say anything, ask whether this sentence adds weight or removes weight from your presence in this room. If it adds nothing, let it dissolve before it reaches your mouth. The second is the 3-second rule. When someone says something that triggers a reaction in you, criticism, provocation, a passive-aggressive comment disguised as concern, count 3 seconds internally before you open your mouth. Those 3 seconds are the distance between a reaction and a response, between instinct and architecture. In those 3 seconds, the old version of you loses control of the microphone and the new version picks it up. The third rule is the simplest and the most powerful. After you finish speaking, do not fill the silence that follows. Let your words stand alone in the room like a structure that does not need scaffolding. Silence after a strong sentence is not emptiness, it is emphasis. It is the space where what you said lands in the other person's chest instead of being buried under the noise of your own additions. When the mind has shifted its narrative and the words begin carrying new weight, a third layer activates on its own. It is the layer that determines who gets to stand close to you at what distance and under what conditions. Because the truth is, not everyone who loves you has earned proximity, and not everyone standing near you is actually standing with you. The version forming at the end of that hallway already knows the difference. And it is time you learned it too. Not everyone who loves you deserves to stand close to you. And not everyone standing close to you actually loves you. These 2 truths sound simple, but they will rearrange your entire social architecture the moment you stop treating them as ideas and start treating them as operating principles. You have spent years granting access based on history, how long you have known someone, what you've been through together, what loyalty you feel you owe because of shared memories. But history is not qualification. Someone can know you for a decade and still not have the capacity to hold what you are becoming. And someone you met last year might carry the exact steadiness your next season requires. The version of you that is forming does not distribute access based on time served. It distributes access based on one thing only. Can this person hold the weight of my truth without ever using it against me? Think of your life as 3 concentric circles. The innermost circle holds 2, maybe 3 people, the ones who have access to your dreams, your fears, and the rawest, unfinished version of you. The only qualification for this circle is not affection and not loyalty in the abstract. It is this: when you share the most vulnerable thing inside you, they do not store it as ammunition for a future argument. They do not reference it casually in front of others. They do not use your openness as leverage when the dynamic between you shifts. That is the single test, and most people you love will not pass it. That is not a judgment on their character. It is an acknowledgement that proximity to your depth is not a right. It is a stewardship, and not everyone has been trained to carry what they are given. The middle circle is for people you respect and enjoy, but who do not receive your strategy, your wounds, or your unfinished plans. They see the version of you that is pleasant and present, but not exposed. They know you are doing well. They do not know what you are building or what it cost you to get here. This is not deception. This is the same wisdom God operates with, revealing what needs to be revealed in the season. It needs to be revealed, and not a moment before. The outer circle is everyone else. They receive your kindness, your courtesy, your professionalism, but they do not receive your energy, your attention, or your emotional bandwidth. Not because you are guarded, because you are finally honest about the fact that not every person in your life needs to know what is happening inside you. Now here is the part that stings. There is someone you have placed in the inner circle who belongs in the outer one. You already know who they are because your body has been telling you for months. When you succeed at something, their first response is to measure it against their own life rather than celebrate alongside you. Information you shared in confidence has somehow reached ears you never intended, and the only bridge between those ears and your words is this person. They check on you during your hardest moments, but become conspicuously absent when you are thriving. These are not signs of a bad person. These are signs of a person standing in the wrong circle. And the discomfort you feel around them, that low-grade tension you keep dismissing as overthinking, is the version of you that is becoming, sending a clear signal. This person should not be here. Moving someone between circles does not require confrontation or dramatic announcements. It requires 3 quiet adjustments that happen gradually enough that no one even notices the architecture shifting. You adjust time becoming less available, not abruptly, but naturally. You adjust information sharing less depth, moving from "I am building something new" to "I am fine staying busy." And you adjust emotional investment. You stop needing them to understand you, which is the adjustment that actually sets you free. When you no longer require someone's comprehension to feel valid, their position in your life stops being a source of anxiety and starts being a simple logistical fact. They are where they are, and you are no longer rearranging yourself to make their proximity comfortable. Every time you place the right person in the right circle, the hallway shortens. The figure at the end is no longer a shadow. You are beginning to see features now, the outline of a face. And that face carries something you have not yet seen in your own reflection. A piece that does not depend on anyone else's presence to hold itself together. You have reclaimed your energy. You have restructured your language. You have reorganized who stands where. Now comes the part that most people never reach, the place where inner authority stops being a concept and starts becoming a force that the outside world has no choice but to respond to. Real power does not announce itself. It does not argue its case or campaign for recognition. It walks into a room, and the room reorganizes, not because anyone was asked to move, but because something in the atmosphere shifted the moment that presence crossed the threshold. You have felt this before in the company of certain people. Not the loudest ones, not the ones performing authority, but the ones who sat quietly and somehow owned the space without claiming it. That quality is not personality. It is not confidence in the way the world teaches confidence. It is an internal magnetic field, and it is the single most consequential thing you will ever build, because it determines not just how people treat you, but what opportunities can even find you in the first place. Every person broadcasts a field of invisible signals before they say a single word. These signals are assembled from three sources: how deeply you trust your own value without needing anyone to co-sign it, how much of your emotional stability depends on external approval, and how attached or detached you are from specific outcomes. This is not mysticism. This is what every negotiation expert, every hiring manager, every investor reads in the first 30 seconds of meeting someone. They do not know they are reading it. They call it a gut feeling or first impression. But what they are actually detecting is the strength or weakness of your internal field, and that field either opens doors before you knock or closes them before you arrive. Here is where this stops being abstract and starts touching your wallet. When your internal field is strong, you negotiate differently. You do not walk into a salary conversation saying, "I believe I deserve more," with a rising inflection that turns a statement into a question. You state your number. You stop talking, and you let the silence after that number do the work that no argument ever could. The person across the table feels something specific. In that silence, they feel that you will walk away if the number is not met. And more importantly, they feel that you will be perfectly fine if you do. That combination, clarity plus detachment, is the most expensive energy in any room. It cannot be faked because it does not come from technique. It comes from a field that was built over months and years of doing exactly what the previous chapters described: reclaiming energy, restructuring thought, reorganizing access. Picture 2, people interviewing for the same position, same qualifications, same experience, same resume. One walks in carrying the energy of "Please choose me." The other walks in carrying the energy of "I am here to evaluate whether this place is worthy of my time." Both are polite. Both are professional. But the field each one broadcasts could not be more different. The first signals scarcity: "I need this and that need," gives you leverage over me. The second signals selection: "I have options and my presence here is a choice, not a necessity." Which one gets hired? Almost always the second. Which one gets offered more money? Without exception, the second. Not because they performed better in the interview, but because their field communicated something that no scripted answer can replicate. It communicated that this person already knows what they are worth, and they're not here to be convinced of it. You have experienced this principle at least once in your own life, even if you did not have language for it at the time. Think about the opportunity that arrived precisely when you had almost stopped wanting it, the relationship that showed up after you genuinely released the need for one, the door that opened the week you finally made peace with it, staying closed. That was not coincidence, and it was not some mystical law of attraction. It was basic human psychology operating at its deepest level. When you stop broadcasting desperation, you start broadcasting choice. And the energy of choice pulls things toward you that the energy of need pushes away. The version of you that is becoming does not release attachment because it is tired of wanting. It releases because it understands that gripping is the signature of scarcity, and scarcity is the weakest magnetic field a person can carry. Anointed one, this is the territory God has been preparing you to enter, not with louder prayers or bigger declarations, but with a quiet internal authority that does not need the world to agree before it moves. The architect did not walk you through silence, through boundary setting, through the painful restructuring of your own mind, just so you could feel better. He walked you through it so you could carry what is coming without being crushed by it. Because what is coming next requires more than strength. It requires influence, and influence is what happens when inner authority stops being something you practice and becomes something the world around you has no choice but to feel. Genuine influence does not come from changing how people think. It comes from living so aligned with what is true inside you that your way of moving through the world creates its own gravitational pull. Control needs force manipulation and constant maintenance. The moment you stop applying pressure, people scatter. Influence needs none of that. It is the natural byproduct of a life that has been ordered from the inside out. When you stop performing and start simply being what you are, people do not just stay, they reorganize themselves around you without being asked. And the difference between those two dynamics is the difference between a career that exhausts you and a calling that sustains you, between money that comes and goes and wealth that compounds, because it is built on something the market cannot replicate. Let me make this concrete, because the spiritual community has a habit of leaving things floating in the clouds where they cannot pay your rent. The person who operates through control in a professional environment is the one sending 14 follow-up emails, micromanaging every deliverable, hovering over their team like a helicopter with a spreadsheet. They get results, yes, but every result costs them twice, once in effort, once in the resentment building quietly in the people around them. The moment that person takes a vacation or steps away, the entire structure wobbles because it was held together not by shared vision, but by surveillance. Now watch the person who operates through influence. They set the standard once. They demonstrate it through their own behavior, rather than through memos and meetings about behavior. And something strange happens. The people around them begin to self-correct, not out of fear, but out of something closer to respect, something closer to not wanting to be the weak link next to someone who clearly is not one. Control produces employees who comply. Influence produces people who take ownership. And ownership is the only thing that scales without burning you alive. In business and in money, the same principle cuts even deeper. The person operating through control chases clients, discounts their value, sends desperate follow-ups worded as casual check-ins. The person operating through influence builds something so well crafted that the work speaks on its own behalf, and clients begin arriving through referral rather than pursuit. This is the difference between marketing, which is effort, and magnetism, which is architecture. One drains your energy every single day. The other compounds while you sleep. And you have already seen glimpses of this in your own life. The moments when you stopped pushing and something moved toward you on its own. The project that gained traction the week you stopped obsessing over metrics. The person who reached out precisely when you released the need to hear from them. These were not flukes. They were previews of what becomes your permanent reality when influence replaces control as your primary operating system. There is a scene that captures this better than any principle. A meeting room. 10 people talking, presenting ideas, defending positions, filling every second with sound. One person has not spoken for 45 minutes. They are not disengaged. Their eyes are tracking everything, absorbing the room the way still water absorbs every stone thrown into it. Eventually, someone turns to them and says, "What do you think?" And when that person speaks 3 sentences, maybe 4, the entire room stops. Not because the content was more brilliant than what came before, but because 45 minutes of disciplined silence had created a weight that those 3 sentences inherited. Every word landed like it had been placed there by someone who understood that speaking is not influence, timing is influence, restraint is influence, and knowing when to deploy your voice is worth more than knowing how to raise it. Two principles will anchor this into your daily life if you let them. First, act before you announce. Stop telling people what you are building. Build it. Let the results become visible on their own timeline, and let other people be the ones who point at it. When someone else names your achievement, it carries 10 times the weight of you naming it yourself, because it arrives as observation rather than advertisement. Second, elevate the people around you rather than spotlighting yourself. The most durable influence does not come from you shining brighter than everyone. It comes from you making the people in your circle shine brighter because of your presence. When you become the person who raises the standard of every room you enter without demanding credit for it, you become the center that holds not by force but by function. The figure at the end of the hallway is close enough now that you can feel its breath. And what you notice is something that surprises you, that face is not wearing armor. No defenses, no rehearsed expressions, no mask prepared for the next threat. Just presence, pure, undecorated presence. And you realize that what you have been walking toward was never a stronger version of yourself. It was a truer one. Now the only question remaining is where to place this version in the world, not where others expect you, but where your design was always meant to function. You do not need the world to understand you. You need to place yourself where understanding is not a prerequisite for your light to function. Most people spend their lives trying to shine in environments that were architecturally designed to dim them, workplaces that punish the very qualities that make them valuable, relationships that require them to shrink in order to be palatable, social circles where their growth is treated as a threat rather than an invitation. And the exhaustion that comes from this is not the exhaustion of effort. It is the exhaustion of misalignment, of pouring your best into a container that was never shaped to hold it. The version of you that is becoming does not swim harder. It chooses the right current. And that single shift in strategy changes everything downstream. There is a critical distinction that most people never make, and it costs them years. The distinction between proving and positioning. Proving is when you change who you are to fit the environment you are in. You soften your opinions in meetings because the culture rewards compliance. You downplay your ambitions around friends because their comfort depends on you staying at their level. You accept compensation below your value because the fear of asking feels larger than the cost of staying silent. Proving is exhausting because it requires you to maintain two versions of yourself simultaneously, the real one and the performing one, and the energy required to sustain that gap is the energy you should be using to build. Positioning is the opposite. Positioning is choosing or creating environments where the real version of you is the asset, not the problem. It is not about finding a place where everyone agrees with you. It is about finding a place where what you naturally carry is treated as value rather than disruption. Let me put this in terms that hit your actual life. Ask yourself a question you may have been avoiding. Is my current environment rewarding what I am strongest at, or is it punishing it? If you are a person who thinks in systems and vision, but you work in a culture that only rewards task completion and compliance, you are not underperforming. You are mispositioned. If you are someone whose natural gift is deep, honest communication, but your closest relationships require you to perform superficiality to keep the peace, you are not too intense. You are in the wrong circle. Positioning is not abandonment. It is the recognition that a seed planted in sand will exhaust itself trying to grow, while the same seed planted in soil will rise without the same struggle. The seed did not change. The ground did. And sometimes the most strategic thing you will ever do is stop blaming yourself for not blooming and start examining the soil. Here is a story that will stay with you because it is probably closer to your own than you realize. Someone talented, genuinely talented, spends 5 years at a company that never promotes them. They work harder, stay later, volunteer for the projects no one else wants. Nothing changes. The narrative inside their head starts to calcify. Maybe I am not good enough. Maybe I need another certification. Maybe I need to be more visible. Then something shifts. They leave, not with a grand exit, not with a speech, just a quiet repositioning. And within 6 months at the new place, they are recognized, promoted, compensated at a level that would have seemed impossible 12 months earlier. Nothing about their skill changed. Nothing about their work ethic changed. What changed was the ground they were standing on. They stopped trying to grow in sand and placed themselves in soil. That is positioning. And God has been preparing you for exactly this kind of move, not by making you tougher, but by making you clear enough to recognize where your design actually fits. 3 areas of your life need this audit right now, and you already sense which ones they are. In your relationships, stop trying to be understood by everyone. Identify the 2 or 3 people who have the capacity to receive you without requiring you to translate yourself into a smaller language, and invest there. Let the rest receive your kindness, but not your depth. In your career, ask the honest question, does this environment reward what I naturally carry, or does it require me to suppress it? If the answer is suppression, begin positioning for transition, not out of impulse, but out of alignment. In your daily energy, ask every morning which 3 things deserve the best of what you carry today. Everything else receives the remainder, not the reserve. You have probably felt this truth physically without naming it. Think about the last time you walked away from a place or a person and felt an immediate lightness, not relief from conflict, but something deeper, like finally exhaling after holding your breath for years. That was not emotional reaction. That was your body confirming what your spirit already knew. That place was not shaped for the version of you that is becoming. And the version forming at the end of the hallway does not force itself into rooms that were not designed for it. It walks calmly, deliberately toward the door that opens without resistance, not because the path is easy, but because alignment feels different from struggle, and you are finally learning to tell them apart. Now there is only one thing left, and it is not a conclusion. It is an arrival. Chosen one. You have walked the entire hallway, and the figure you first glimpsed in the distance, that outline standing at the far end, carrying a stillness you did not yet recognize, is now standing directly in front of you, close enough to touch, close enough that you can see the expression on its face. And here is what surprises you. It is not fierce. It is not armored. It is not the warrior version you imagined you needed to become. It is simply you, without the apologies, without the performance, without the layers of narrative that were never yours to begin with. Just presence. And that presence is enough. It was always enough. You were the one who did not believe it yet. Let me walk you back through what brought you here, not to repeat it, but to let you see the architecture from above. You began by hearing a signal you could no longer ignore, that nameless heaviness that turned out to be growth pressing against a container that had become too small. You shifted from reacting to designing, from asking, why is this happening to me, to asking, what is this building inside me? You learned that silence is not emptiness, but the first act of reclaiming what had been leaking from you for years. You restructured boundaries in 3 layers first, in the stories your mind was allowed to run, then in the words your mouth was allowed to release, then in the access your life was allowed to grant. You discovered that real power is not loud, and that influence does not require control. It requires alignment so deep that the world reorganizes around you without being asked. And you stopped proving yourself in environments that were never designed for what you carry, and started positioning yourself where your design could finally function without apology. Each of those steps was not self-improvement. Each one was obedience to a blueprint that existed before you had language for it. The architect did not walk you through loneliness, through betrayal, through seasons of silence, because he forgot about you. He walked you through them because the structure he is building requires a foundation that cannot be shaken by applause or destroyed by criticism. What has been forming in you is not fragile. It was tested before it was revealed. And now it is ready not because the world is ready for it, but because you are finally able to carry it without collapsing under its weight or giving it away to the first person who asks. Here is the quiet truth that seals everything. The version of you that is becoming does not arrive one day in the future like a package you are waiting for. It arrives in every decision you make from this point forward. Every time you hold your boundary without explaining it, that version is living through you. Every time you choose silence over reaction, it is breathing through you. Every time you walk toward alignment instead of forcing yourself into spaces that require you to shrink, it is stepping through you. You are not becoming someone else. You are returning to the version that existed before the world told you it was too much, too intense, too quiet, too different. That version was never destroyed. It was just waiting for you to stop apologizing for it. Anointed One. The eyes that watched you most closely throughout this entire journey were never your enemies, never the jealous ones, never the ones who doubted you from the outside. The eyes that watched you most closely belonged to this, the highest version of yourself, held in the hands of God, waiting with a patience that outlasted every season you thought would break you. And today you have finally met its gaze without looking away. If this message reached something real inside you, not excitement, not hype, but that quiet recognition that settles in the chest, like a stone finding water, then you already know what to do. Share this with the one person your spirit has been thinking about since the first chapter. Leave a word in the comments, not for me, but as a marker for yourself, a time stamp that says, "Today I saw clearly." And if you want to continue walking this road, the subscribe button is not a transaction. It is a covenant between you and the next chapter that is already forming. Chosen One. Thank you for staying until the last word. Not everyone walks the full hallway, but you did. And that tells me everything I need to know about what you are ready to carry next.